my role as the Director of Governance and Executive Office at Community Foundations of Canada is really to help facilitate, as I call it, our wider governance ecosystem. So we have a network of over 200 community foundations from coast to coast to coast that we support through learning initiatives, through data collection, through kind of interaction moments, be it a conference or peer gathering events. So where I step in is to help facilitate the governance of that, the planning of that, and the support. It's so interesting because often when people ask me what I do, there is an assumption that I work exclusively with a board or a senior leadership team. But in fact, governance touches everyone in an organization, all stakeholders. We're all party to hopefully one purpose or one mission. When we start to challenge governance as being just a function of a board of directors or committees, we get a much more holistic appreciation for all of the perspectives that come into play to those decisions. And when you start to think about your wider ecosystem as purpose-driven with that in the middle for Community Foundations of Canada, it's to create a world where everyone belongs. So our entire team is collectively working towards that end. So when we're thinking about governance and decision-making and ultimately the strategic direction of the organization and different pathways that we can work towards belonging, those ideas don't come from a group around a board table. Governance isn't held by one person. It's not held by a board or a senior leadership team. It's embodied and practiced. So whether you have a small organization with an executive director who is leading different ways of approaching strategic governance and strategic thinking, or if you have a small volunteer board who is sitting down and really evaluating different ways to understand where you're going in the future. Emergent practices can, I think, easily be adapted to a number of different circumstances and teams. So you don't need a dedicated governance professional support or consultant to do this work. I would say that you need patience and just the ability to jump into the unknown and the complexity of this work. And be unafraid to do that and to do it with your team, whoever that may be. I think the principles of emergent strategy as applied to governance are in development. So at Community Foundations of Canada, we are really trying to think of what are the key ways of being that we think we need to embody to inform our thinking and decision making. So for us, it has come to fruition in a few practice areas. Primarily, those areas are honed in on the ways in which we want to foster relationships, the ways in which we hope to embed learning and feedback, the ways in which we hope to connect with our network and support our network. And as we're going through and developing these practices, we're really trying to understand how they would come to life in conversations with various stakeholders, in conversations about risk and opportunity. And ultimately, we're maybe midway on our journey and really articulating what emergent governance means for us in very close partnership with our board and kind of leadership team. But I think what we will come out with is ultimately a compass for us to understand how these practices or modalities can help inform our thinking, our questioning, and our decision frames. If we were to embark on a strategic planning process, we would have made a number of assumptions, which, the knowledge that we were assuming may or may not have been true, but it ultimately would have informed a 2 to 3 year plan, say with 2 to 4 goals and a number of metrics that we could measure our success by, your traditional strategic planning process. Where emergent strategy kind of complements but also diverges from that approach is it asks its users to, instead of thinking of this as a linear process, thinking of it more so as a circular process where you're constantly learning and iterating, taking in the complexity of the world around you. So a emergent framework, for example, or a emergent informed strategy may not have four singular goals to be achieved based on assumptions and known knowledge at the time. It may have more directional aspirations, uh, and from there, you'll need to kind of understand how to track and measure yourself in relation to direction as opposed to tangible goals. So there's a lot of living in complexity involved in strategic thinking. But what's wonderful about it is it's really iterative and it allows you to be present in the moment. And I think what we've all experienced over the last three plus years from a governance perspective is that moment can change so quickly. So having a framework at your disposal that guides you through adaptive thinking is a wonderful tool to have from a board perspective or from a staff perspective. I think it gives everyone on the team a road into a different type of thinking that I hope will breed new and innovative ideas and maybe challenge some of the orthodoxies that we've held. So when we're exploring a new opportunity, we'll be thinking about whether we are moving at the speed of trust, which is one of the practices that we're exploring right now. What does that mean for the way in which we're designing programs, initiatives, and learning opportunities? So the work is iterative. It's definitely nonlinear. And there, I think, is a messy middle that anyone embarking on this work will likely find themselves in. And it's something to embrace. And I can let you know when we're through the other end what that looks like.